There's a secret that all presidents know, but none of them will ever publicly admit. A hidden code written over 500 years ago by a man who was tortured, exiled, and considered humanity's most dangerous thinker. This code still determines who rises to power and who disappears forever. Barack Obama used it, Trump used it, Putin uses it, and by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how they do it. This man's name was Niccolo Machiavelli, and what he discovered in a cold Florence cell in 1513 went far beyond anything any history book has ever revealed. Because Machiavelli didn't just write The Prince, he left an even darker legacy. 7 secret laws that explain why some leaders conquer the world while others simply disappear. If you want to understand how politics really works, stick with me until the end, because this story will forever change the way you view every president, every election, every decision that shapes your destiny. The year was 1513 in the icy shadows of Florence cell. A broken man scribbled words that would forever change the face of world power. Niccolo Machiavelli didn't know he was creating humanity's most dangerous manual, a secret code that would be whispered in the corridors of palaces, in the boardrooms of the most powerful corporations, and in presidential offices for over 500 years. But the truth you're about to discover goes far beyond what they teach in schools. Because Machiavelli didn't just write The Prince, he left a hidden legacy, 7 secret laws that were carefully preserved by the innermost circles of power. Laws that explain how kings became emperors, how businessmen became billionaires, and how mediocre politicians became world leaders. The story begins on a December night in 1512. Machiavelli had lost everything. His political career was destroyed, his reputation in tatters, and the torture he had suffered at the hands of the Medici family still burned in his flesh. He was financially ruined, exiled, to his small country estate, far from the Florence he loved so much. He was a defeated man, but he still harbored an ambition that consumed him like a slow fire. On that fateful night, as he gazed at the stars through his bedroom window, Machiavelli made a decision that would echo through the centuries. He would not seek merely political redemption. He would create something much greater, much more dangerous. He would map the anatomy of human power with the precision of a surgeon dissecting a cadaver. For months, Machiavelli obsessively studied every leader he had ever met, every strategy he had witnessed, every betrayal he had witnessed. He analyzed Cesare Borgia, the duke who conquered territories like a trophies collector. He studied Pope Alexander VI, who transformed the church into a ruthless political machine. He observed Lorenzo de' Medici, who manipulated alliances like a chess master, and then, in a revelation that Machiavelli himself described as diabolical, he realized something terrible. Power did not follow moral rules. Power had its own natural laws as immutable as gravity, and those who understood these laws could shape the destiny of humanity. The first secret law Machiavelli discovered was devastatingly simple. Perception is more powerful than reality. He realized that Cesare Borgia was not necessarily the most skilled warrior of his time, but he was the most feared. Borgia had understood that fear was a more effective tool than 1,000 soldiers. When he conquered a city, he not only defeated his enemies, he made them mysteriously disappear, creating dark legends about his supernatural power. Machiavelli meticulously noted, "A prince is to be feared, but never hated. Hatred breeds rebellion, but fear breeds obedience." This first law explained why seemingly weak leaders could control entire empires, while invincible warriors fell to cunning adversaries. The second law emerged from his analysis of Pope Alexander VI. Control the narrative, control the world. Machiavelli observed how the Pope transformed his vices into virtues through meticulously planned propaganda. His illegitimate children became blessed by God. His brutal wars became holy crusades. His corruption became divine prosperity. This law revealed something even more disturbing. Truth was malleable in the hands of those who controlled information. Machiavelli realized that the Pope wasn't just lying. He was recreating reality through the strategic repetition of his narratives. It was a form of black magic applied to politics. But it was during his study of Lorenzo de' Medici that Machiavelli discovered the third law, perhaps the cruelest of all. Keep your enemies close, but your rivals closer. Lorenzo had perfected the art of destroying opponents from within, offering them prestigious positions that isolated them from their power bases. Machiavelli was fascinated to discover that Lorenzo deliberately promoted people who posed potential threats, placing them in positions where they were completely dependent on him. It was a web of psychological dependence that turned wolves into domestic dogs. For weeks, Machiavelli obsessed over this dynamic. He realized that Lorenzo didn't physically eliminate his rivals. That would be too primitive. Instead, he absorbed them, corrupted them, and transformed them into extensions of his own will. It was a form of political cannibalism that left his victims alive but completely devoured from within. The fourth law arose from a terrifying discovery about human nature. Gratitude is more fragile than glass, but debt is stronger than steel. Machiavelli observed how wise leaders never gave gratuitous favors. Every act of kindness was, in fact, a calculated investment to create dependence. He studied cases where princes saved nobles from financial ruin, not out of generosity, but to create eternal debtors. Moral debt was more powerful than any physical chain because the victim felt compelled to maintain his own prison. This law explained why some leaders achieved absolute loyalty without resorting to violence. They simply created situations where people felt eternally indebted. It was a sophisticated form of voluntary slavery. If this story has touched your heart so far, don't forget to leave a like. This helps the channel continue to reveal secrets that many prefer to keep hidden. The fifth law emerged from an even darker analysis of the psychology of power. Divide and conquer, but unite to destroy. Machiavelli discovered that truly Machiavellian leaders not only created divisions among their enemies, they also temporarily united opposing groups against specific targets. This strategy was like a symphony of orchestrated destruction. First, the leader identified who needed to be eliminated. Then he created an unlikely coalition of natural enemies, all united by a common hatred for the chosen target. Once the target was destroyed, the coalition naturally fragmented, leaving the leader stronger than before. Machiavelli realized that this law explained seemingly impossible political ascensions. Mediocre leaders could topple political giants simply by orchestrating temporary and strategic alliances. The sixth law was perhaps the most disturbing of all. Public piety conceals private cruelty. Machiavelli observed that the most effective leaders were those who could project an image of kindness and justice while practicing the most calculated brutality away from the public eye. This law revealed a terrifying truth about the nature of power. Compassion was just a mask. The most dangerous leaders were those who cried in public over the same problems they created in secret. It was a form of institutionalized psychopathy, where empathy became just another tool of manipulation. Machiavelli documented cases of princes who visited orphanages during the day and ordered executions at night. Duplicity wasn't a character flaw, it was a refined technique of social control. But it was the seventh and final law that nearly destroyed Machiavelli's sanity. Absolute power does not corrupt, it reveals. This discovery shook his own beliefs about human nature. He realized that power didn't turn good people into monsters. Instead, power simply removed the social masks that hid people's true nature. Those who became tyrants already carried this seed within themselves. Power simply gave them permission to express it fully. This law was the most dangerous because it suggested that evil was not an aberration. It was a latent possibility in every human being. Power was merely the catalyst that unleashed already existing potentials. For months, Machiavelli wrestled with the implications of his own discoveries. He had mapped the anatomy of evil with scientific precision, but it left him questioning his own humanity. If these laws were universal, what did that say about himself? It was then that the first devastating turn of events in history occurred. In March 1513, Machiavelli received an unexpected visitor. Lorenzo de' Medici, the new Duke of Urbino and grandson of Lorenzo the Magnificent, had secretly arrived at his estate. But he came not as a conqueror or a judge. He came as a student. "I hear you're writing something interesting about power," Lorenzo said with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Something that could be useful to someone in my position." Machiavelli immediately realized he was facing either a trap or an extraordinary opportunity. Lorenzo had discovered his work through a network of spies Machiavelli had never imagined existed. Even more disturbing, Lorenzo wasn't just interested in reading his theories, he wanted to test them. "You want to be my secret advisor," Lorenzo revealed with brutal frankness. "But not officially, never officially. You will remain here, exiled from the eyes of the world, while your secret laws shape the destiny of Florence. This proposal revealed something Machiavelli had not considered. His laws were not merely academic observations, they were operational instructions for a new kind of domination. Lorenzo had understood that Machiavelli's knowledge could transform a regional duke into a continental power. Machiavelli accepted, but with one condition that surprised Lorenzo. He wanted to secretly document the results of applying his laws. It would be a full-scale political experiment with consequences that would affect thousands of lives. Over the next 2 years, Machiavelli witnessed Lorenzo's terrifying transformation from a young nobleman into a ruthless political mastermind. The first law was applied immediately. Lorenzo began to cultivate an aura of mystery and danger. Political rivals began to disappear, not through obvious assassinations, but through strange accidents and sudden illnesses. The second law transformed Lorenzo into a master of propaganda. He created a network of artists, writers, and preachers who spread specific narratives about his leadership. Every victory was magnified. Every defeat was recontextualized as strategy. Every cruelty was justified as divine necessity. But it was the application of the third law that revealed Lorenzo's true Machiavellian genius. He began promoting his most dangerous enemies to positions of high visibility, but without real power. It was like creating a political zoo where predators were kept in gilded cages. Machiavelli watched, fascinated and horrified, as Lorenzo's former enemies became his most ardent supporters. The dependence created by their prestigious positions turned them into willing psychological prisoners. The fourth law created a network of moral debts that stretched throughout Florence. Lorenzo systematically saved people from crises he himself had secretly orchestrated. Entire families felt eternally grateful to the man who had rescued them from situations he himself had created. The fifth law was applied through a series of orchestrated conflicts between rival, noble families. Lorenzo always emerged as the peacemaker, the neutral arbiter, when in fact he had instigated the initial conflicts. Each resolution strengthened him while weakening all the other players. The sixth law created Lorenzo's public image as a pious and just leader. He funded orphanages and hospitals during the day, while his covert operations eliminated dissidents at night. The population saw only the benefactor, never the executioner. But it was the application of the seventh law that revealed Lorenzo's true nature. Power hadn't corrupted him. It had simply revealed a natural calculator that had always been there. Lorenzo wasn't learning to be cruel. He was learning to be cruel efficiently. For 18 months, Machiavelli documented every move, every decision, every consequence. His laws were working with terrifying precision. Lorenzo was becoming one of the most powerful leaders in Italy, and no one understood exactly how. It was then that the second twist occurred, even more devastating than the first. In September 1515, Machiavelli discovered something that made him physically ill. Lorenzo had been applying the laws not only to his external enemies, but also to Machiavelli himself. Every conversation, every consultation, every moment of apparent trust had been carefully orchestrated to create psychological dependence. Machiavelli realized he had become the first test subject of his own laws. Lorenzo had used the first law to create an aura of mystery around his relationship with Machiavelli. He had used the second law to control the narrative about the secret advisor. He had applied the third law by keeping Machiavelli close but isolated. The fourth law had created a moral debt through the redemption of exile. The fifth law had united Machiavelli against other potential advisors. The sixth law had created the illusion of genuine friendship. And the seventh law had revealed that Lorenzo had always been a natural manipulator. The most terrifying discovery was that Lorenzo had secretly documented his own observations of Machiavelli. He was studying the creator of laws with the same cold, scientific attention Machiavelli had used to study other leaders. "You have created something magnificent," Lorenzo said during his last meeting with Machiavelli. "But you made a fatal mistake. You assumed that you would be the only one to truly understand your own laws." Lorenzo then revealed that he had created secret copies of Machiavelli's work and distributed them to a select network of emerging leaders across Europe, not out of generosity, but as a strategic investment. He was creating a generation of leaders who would think they had discovered the secrets of power, when in fact they were following a script he controlled. "Your laws are powerful," Lorenzo continued with an icy smile, "but there is an eighth law that you have never discovered. He who teaches others to fish controls all the fish in the world." Machiavelli then understood the full extent of his own manipulation. He had not been merely a secret advisor, he had been an unwitting instrument in the creation of a network of power that would extend far beyond Florence, far beyond his own lifetime. Lorenzo revealed that his laws were already being applied in France, Spain, England, and the German states. An entire generation of leaders was being shaped by principles they believed they had independently discovered. "You wanted to understand power," Lorenzo said, "but true power is making others believe they have discovered for themselves what you wanted them to know." At that moment, Machiavelli realized that he had created not just a manual of power, but an intellectual virus that would spread through the centuries, infecting each generation of leaders with the same thought patterns. The most terrifying truth was that Lorenzo had understood something not even Machiavelli had. The 7 laws were not just tools for gaining power. They were tools for perpetuating a system of domination that transcended individuals, transcended generations, even transcended entire civilizations. During his final years, Machiavelli lived with the devastating weight of his discovery. He had attempted to map the anatomy of power, but had instead created the DNA of a form of domination that would reproduce itself indefinitely. He died in 1527 at the age of 58, taking with him the knowledge that his secret laws had become the hidden language of world power. But Machiavelli never imagined how far this language would travel. Over the following centuries, the 7 secret laws were passed down through an informal network of leaders who did not always fully understand their origins. European kings applied them instinctively. Revolutionary leaders discovered them out of necessity. Industrialists developed them through experience. Modern politicians absorbed them through political culture. What Lorenzo had predicted came true. Machiavelli's laws were no longer anyone's intellectual property. They had become part of the collective unconscious of human power. In the 20th century, political psychologists began to identify recurring patterns in the behavior of authoritarian leaders. Unbeknownst to them, they were documenting the same laws Machiavelli had discovered 500 years earlier. The first law, "Perception is more powerful than reality," explained how dictators built personality cults through systematic propaganda. The second, law, "Control the narrative, control the world," revealed how authoritarian regimes manipulated information to create alternative realities. The third law, "Keep your enemies close, but your rivals closer," showed how leaders absorbed opposition through strategic co-optation. The fourth law, "Gratitude is more fragile than glass, but debt is stronger than steel," explained how political systems created dependency through conditional benefits. The fifth law, "Divide and conquer, but unite and destroy," revealed how leaders orchestrated conflicts to consolidate power. The sixth law, "Public piety hides private cruelty," showed how the public image was constructed to mask covert operations. The seventh law, "Absolute power does not corrupt, it reveals," explained why certain personality types were naturally drawn to positions of dominance. But the most disturbing discovery of modern researchers was that these laws were not limited to dictators or authoritarian regimes. They operated in democracies, corporations, religious organizations, social movements. In any structure where hierarchy and competition for influence existed, Machiavelli's secret laws had become the universal grammar of human power, transcending political systems, cultures, and historical eras. In the 21st century, political analysts began to realize that election campaigns, corporate strategies, and social media movements followed the same basic patterns identified by Machiavelli 5 centuries earlier. The digital age had not changed the fundamental nature of power. It had merely accelerated and amplified its application. The first law manifested itself through meticulously controlled image campaigns on social media. The second law operated through the control of algorithms and viral narratives. The third law worked through the co-optation of influencers and opinion leaders. The fourth law created dependency through digital platforms and ecosystems. The fifth law orchestrated cultural conflicts and artificial polarization. The sixth law constructed public personas that masked commercial or political operations. The seventh law revealed how technology simply amplified tendencies toward domination that had always existed in human nature. Today, Machiavelli's 7 secret laws continue to operate in the shadows of world power. They are the unspoken language of the corridors of power, the hidden code that explains why certain leaders rise while others fade, why some narratives become accepted, truths while others are forgotten. The most terrifying thing is that most people who enforce these laws aren't even aware they're doing so. They've become so fundamental to the structure of human power that they operate as instincts, as natural reflexes for anyone seeking influence over others. The question that Machiavelli was never able to answer, and which continues to haunt humanity to this day, is whether these laws represent a discovery about human nature or whether they created that nature. Did Machiavelli simply observe patterns that had always existed, or did he inadvertently create a model that shaped all subsequent evolution of political power? The answer remains hidden in the shadows of history, but one thing is certain. Machiavelli's 7 secret laws continue to govern the world, 5 centuries after they were discovered by a broken man in a cold Florence cell. And perhaps most disturbing of all is the realization that by understanding these laws, you yourself become part of the network of knowledge that perpetuates their application. Because once you see how power truly works, you can never again feign ignorance about its operation. The truth about power is that it spreads like an intellectual virus, and now you've been infected too. And now tell me, would you have done the same in his place? Write in the comments. And if this story intrigued you, click on the video that's appearing on the screen now, because there you'll discover even darker secrets about occult power.